hurt the distance, or they come to see me because they have a goal in life and they're not achieving it, and they want somebody to help them get the skills necessary to get to where they want to go. The old days of the only people who see psychologists or psychiatrists are the people who think they're Napoleon Bonaparte and Joan of Arc, those days are gone. We still see Joan once in a while. Okay. I'm a psychologist and a counselor. As such, I am trained to understand human behavior, human feelings, and to put them in a perspective that will allow people to grow and to change. And a lot of my job is to support people through the process of change so that their lives end up being more satisfying and rewarding lives. I got into this field, as probably most of my colleagues have, to heal myself first. I was pretty anxious and distraught at one time in my life. I sought the services of a psychotherapist. I found that, hey, this stuff works. And about a year later, I thought to myself, well, geez, if you have to work to make a living, you might as well work at something that you like. And I said, well, I could sit and talk to people. I mean, she could do it, right? Why couldn't I do it? So I started going to school and finding out that it was a little bit more than having coffee clutches with people. It was a bit more involved in that, but I could probably learn how to do that, so that's what I've done. And eventually what I did was get a doctorate in psychology and licenses as a marriage and family therapist as well as a psychologist. For the last, I guess, 9 or 10 years, most of my professional activity has been involved with my private practice, although I have worked for counseling centers before, community-based mental health service agencies. And in all those capacities, I've provided consultations of this kind to private industry, the military, school districts, and community-based agencies that provide counseling services. I do a lot of their training and consulting for them. I was telling Bobby and Debbie that I did this seminar. It was an expanded version of 3 hours to 600 physicians at the Hotel Del Coronado. And again, there were supposed to be 150, and 600 showed up. And I was stressed. Frantic. I was not stressed. I was in an absolute panic attack. I kept on drinking water and trying to calm myself down, and it wasn't working, and so I decided I probably should have been one of the workshop participants rather than the workshop leader. Get a lot of pleasure out of what I do. I think the reason that I do get a lot of pleasure from it is because that I see people change and grow and develop, and when they can come to see me and they can say, bye, you've made enough money, I don't need you anymore. That's when I feel like I did my job well. They might be back 5 years later because the reason that they came to see me originally has been taken care of, but now 5 years later they've got teenagers and a whole new ball game has erupted because I've reared. You ever notice that you don't raise children, you raise chickens and you rear children, right? You rear. I've reared 3 of them. I am going to be a grandfather in a month. If everything goes according to schedule.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And it's a lot less stressful than becoming a father. Because as soon as the kid dirties the diapers, it's like, time to go to mommy. So, also, by the way, being a therapist is very much like being a parent. It's a lot like helping people develop and learn information that will help them get through life more successfully, which is what I perceive being a parent is about. And then they don't need me for that anymore. So when you do your job well as a parent, your kids don't keep coming home. Okay? As opposed to what my Jewish mother thinks. Okay, the topic for today is how to manage stress and how to manage it more successfully. And I wish that stress was as easy to get rid of as this is, because if this were defined as stress, all I would have to do is crumple it up and throw it on the desk, and it would be the desk that would belong to the desk now, it wouldn't belong to me, and I wouldn't have it. It's just not that simple. Stress is not a concrete thing. Stress is an idea, it's a concept, and it's an experience. And because it's so complicated, it makes it really kind of difficult to deal with. Okay? So in order to get... Yeah, sure, take off, just move in if you like, it's okay. Great hope mind, right? And what we're going to do is a very short guided fantasy. If at any time you don't want to do this guided fantasy, all you have to do is open your eyes and you're finished. But I suggest that you go along with this because it's just going to be done to illustrate a point. What I'd like you to do is just take a deep breath, and when you let your breath out, just let your eyelids close. And for just the next few minutes, I'd like you to turn your attention to your body, to the inside, just noticing the motion of your body as you breathe. Noticing that you're aware of the things around you, but they're not real important. You can hear the traffic outside. Of course, it is important for you to attend to my voice because there will be directions here. What I'd like you to imagine in your mind's eye is that you're going to be cooking a recipe that requires about 6 or 7 very sour lemons. And you have none in the kitchen. So in your mind's eye, I would like you to just imagine that you're driving in your car, going down to the supermarket that you normally go to for your groceries. See yourself driving in the car, you might have the radio on. And pull up into the parking lot of the store, and park the car and get out. And walk toward the front door of the store. And you enter the store and you notice an immediate change in your environment when you walk in. There's the glaring neon lights, the sound of groceries being bagged, registers going, change being made. There's a lot of activity in the store. And you decide that you're not going to really shop because you really don't want to be there, but you do have to get these lemons for your recipe. So I'd like to see you entering the store, walking through the aisles and making your way through to the produce section. And at a distance you see the produce section and you can visualize in your mind, you can see a bin full of bright yellow lemons gleaming under the lights, neon lights up above. And you walk toward the lemons and you pick one up and put it in your hand and you can feel kind of that cold temperature from the lemon because the produce is always colder than you are. And you can see the pores in the lemon skin. You might even see some letters embossed on the lemon. I'd say sun-kissed or something like that. And you bring the lemon slowly to your nose so that you can sniff it and see if it smells at all sour. And you get a very slight lemon scent. You're not real sure that these lemons are going to be sour enough for your purposes. And you notice that just down the way from you is the produce person, and he or she has a knife. And you ask the produce person if it would be okay if you just cut open one lemon, and of course you'll pay for it. And the person says okay, so you borrow the knife and you cut the lemon in half. And now you have a half of lemon in each hand. And you look down at the pieces of lemon, and you can see the bright yellow lemon meat in its neat little sections that nature has made for it, with little dewy drops of lemon juice clinging to the lemon meat, with the white and yellow rind around the lemon. And you bring half of the lemon towards your nose and you sniff it, and it is much more pungent smelling, much more pungent lemon smell than you noticed before. You really feel the lemon scent running through your nostrils. But you're a skeptic. You're not convinced. And you just can't resist, and you just sink your teeth into that yellow lemon meat, and you can feel the lemon juices squirting in your mouth. And you're real convinced now. these are very sour lemons. And you thank the grocer for nothing, give him back his knife. You grab about a half a dozen or so lemons, put them in a bag, kind of in a rush, you want to get out of there. And you check out at the cash register, and thank God somebody remembered to put one of those refrigerated water fountains right by the door before you exit, and you can wash that lousy, sour lemon's taste out of your mouth, and you make your way back home in your car. And when you're ready, just open your eyes. How many people salivated? No, water's flowing in and out. See a show of hands.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people had that desire to pucker? And again, a show of hands. How many people see lemons in the room? Because if you do, you should have seen me a long time ago. There's no lemons in the room. In other words, there's not a single physical stimulus in this room that will give you the sensation that you just had in your mouth. But you had it, didn't you? And salivation is literally a glandular reaction. You have, salivary glands underneath your tongue. Saliva, as you probably know, is not water. It has water in it. It is primarily amylases and various other enzymes to get you ready for the process of what? Digestion. Okay, we started with a fantasy. That led to an experience that led to a feeling, and the feeling isn't good unless you love lemons. The fantasy, the picture that you had in your mind, created a biochemical reaction in your body all by itself. And you had an experience, physical experience with your body that you labeled with a feeling. And that feeling was, I don't like this. It doesn't taste good. Or maybe you do like it, I don't know. The facts are that your mind is the master. Your mind creates these physical experiences for you. And your mind always directs the body to do what it's told to do. So if you have pictures in your mind of something horrible that's about to happen, your mind responds. If you have pictures in your mind that something wonderful is going to happen, your mind and body respond. We didn't have to go through all this elaborate stuff. If you've ever had a sexual fantasy, you know that your body reacts. This is nothing new to you. But it just points out that you can have a biochemical experience without there necessarily being something physical in the world to cause it. It's just created through your meditation. So that leads us to one of the major definitions of stress. In order to control stress, it'd be helpful to be able to define it. And stress could be defined as a state of physical arousal that you've labeled as anxiety. The physical arousal is this experience. The feeling that you have about it is an anxious feeling. It's not something that you look forward to. Okay. Any questions about that? That stress is a state of physical arousal that you subjectively label as anxiety. Yeah? Oh, okay. I guess you could say that love is a state of physical arousal that your mind labels as pleasurable. It's a different kind of arousal, by the way. There's some biochemical differences between the state of stress and anxiety and the state of falling in love. I don't know why would they say falling in love. It's like, I guess, is that the same kind of feeling you're supposed to get when you fall off the top of a building? You know, this kind of rush that happens. But what you do is you get biochemically aroused by somebody else. And that chemical attraction, because it is all chemistry, creates a state of physical arousal in you, and you label that as pleasurable. And lo and behold, we're in love. Kind of a lousy way to define love, isn't it? It makes it seem so chemical and scientific, and there's probably some truth and basis for it. So, if stress is a state of physical arousal, what is this physical arousal like? What do you people, let me hear some ideas of, what do you experience when you are under a lot of stress? What kind of sensations do you have?
Frustration.
Frustration? That's a favorite.
Weak. A weakness throughout my body.
Weakness? Okay.
Anger.
Anger?
Tension.
Pressure.
Pardon me?
Tension.
Tension? Pressure?
Headache.
Headache? Pain. I guess pain is just, you get head pain, you get back pain. Some people get jaw pains. Anybody here with TMJ? Okay. Any other experiences of what stress does to you? Okay. And how do you feel after you've noticed that you've had a lack of sleep? Terrible. Are you more irritable?
Yeah.
Just a little. Probably the people you work with would be able to tell you much more clearly how irritable you are.
That was the next one, is a feeling to lash out at anybody close to you.
So let's say feisty, huh? I'm a terrible speller. I think that's right. Okay. Looking for a fight. You're a fight waiting to happen. God help the people that come near you. Yeah.
What time does your body when you're stressed and have trouble sleeping at night? And I can get for 3 or 4 hours. I don't have any trouble going to sleep. I have trouble staying asleep. And then I'll be awake for 3 or 4 hours. And then about an hour before I'm supposed to get up, I'll fall dead.
Yeah. And then you'll resent the alarm clock waking you up because you're finally getting the sleep that you need. Yeah. Sleep disturbances aren't always reactions to stress. Sometimes they're reactions to biochemical imbalances in the body that need to be taken a look at by a physician to rule out the possibility that there is some kind of a chemical basis for why you're not sleeping through the entire night. My father is a chronic insomniac. And my father looks like he's got holes in his eyes all the time. And I think for probably the last 35 or 40 years, he's averaged about 4 hours of sleep. You know, unless he goes out to his place where he lives on the weekends in Palm Desert, and then it's like 10 hours. You know, something happens to him. What happens to him, he's got to change an environment. That's what happens to him. And that change of environment allows him to bracket and put aside everything that might be going through his mind as he's dreaming, because your dreams are messages from your subconscious. It says, hey, knock, knock, listen to me. And if you're not listening, those dreams get horrific. They get so bad that you can't do anything but pay attention to them. And so in my line of work, we spend a lot of time talking about dreams, especially with people that have pressures and anxieties they don't understand. They don't know where it comes from. You know, we call that free-floating anxiety. Like, how did I get to this position? We have to find what the roots are. What's going on in your life that's causing this kind of pressure? And it shows up with disturbed sleep patterns frequently, but it's not the only reason why people have disturbed sleep patterns. What happens when people get physically aroused under stress is something that is biologically imprinted in your genetic code so that you could survive, basically. I mean, if a Bengal tiger walked through the front door right now, he's 650 pounds, and he's hungry. All of us are going to look like supper. Now, if we don't do something pretty fast, we're going to be supper. You have built in the base of your brain certain survival mechanisms to enable you to react to an emergency. If anybody here has ever been in combat, You know what I'm talking about, is that you better respond or you're going to be dead meat. So what does the body do? It's the first thing you do when you see something that frightens you. One of the things that you run. Yeah. What do you do just before you run? You gasp for air. What for? So you can get this oxygen into your bloodstream. The oxygen is there so it can be utilized to burn fuel. Where do you need this fuel? In your muscles. Why? Because that fuel is going to be used to let those muscles do work. And what are you going to be doing? You're going to be running or you're going to be fighting. I don't suggest you fight a Bengal tiger. At least not barehanded. In other words, you're getting prepared for action, fight or flight. Now, if you freeze and pee your pants, you're going to be lunch. Some people do freeze because they don't know what to do. So, this oxygen is getting permeated into your bloodstream by gasping for air, and it has to get pumped to the muscles quickly, so your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, so we can get this blood into the muscles. You don't need any blood in your skin right now. You ever notice when you get nervous how cold your hands and feet get? The groom gets cold feet. I don't know a single bride that ever gets cold feet, right? Sure. Chauvinistic idea. Okay, so you're ready for action. Now, in case that Bengal tiger just happened to nick your skin, you don't have any blood in there, you're not as likely to bleed to death. It has certain survival value, doesn't it? That would be nice not to bleed to death just because it kind of brushed up against you as you were running away. You can hear a pin drop. Your hearing thresholds go way down and you can see in the dark. Because your pupils are dilated like this. It's like the shutter of a camera opening up, right? So, you need this reaction. You also start to sweat. Why do you sweat? Those of you who are mechanically minded would know that you have a radiator in your car to cool off the engine. You're sweating through your skin as your own body's radiator to maintain your body's core temperature at 98.6. You sweat so that you can get this air to evaporate the water on your skin, and that cools your skin, which helps cool your body down. Because your skin knows that your body's going to be doing some heavy-duty work here pretty soon. You're already rolling, ready to go. About 30% of your blood supply is going to go to your brain instead of 20%, because you need to process information just like that. You need to be ready to react. So in a way, we're kind of cursed because we have this animal brain in us underneath the human brain that has geared us for survival in the jungle so that we can survive an attack from a Bengal tiger or a lion or something like that, because that's what it was when we were going through evolution. We needed to be able to survive those conditions. Now, the majority of us in the room don't live in a jungle, at least not an animal jungle. But, you know, think about it. Don't you act like you do? Don't you act as if certain things are as dangerous to you as that Bengal tiger is? What's going to happen to you? I had a cop in to see me in therapy this morning. I just, out of the blue, had to ask, don't you guys have quotas? Don't you have to write so many tickets a day? You've got to have quotas, because I know that that's why I get tickets. Now, I meet everybody's quota. No, we don't have quotas, but it is assumed that if your beat is such and such an area of town at such and such a time of the day for your shift, and you're not making enough arrests or enough tickets or something like that, you're not writing any. They know that part of town's bad news. You better be doing something. They think you're probably down at the beach looking at the girls. So there's not a quota, but it's understood that you better produce results. And if you don't produce results, what's going to happen to you? You're not going to get a paycheck anymore. Eventually, you'll work your way down to a desk, and then from the desk, you'll work your way out the door. And you won't have a paycheck. What will happen to you if you don't have a paycheck? What will happen to you if you don't sell enough loans? Craig, what will happen to them?
Be working for Home Federal.
Oh. Go to work for Home Federal. For much less money, of course.
Of course.
And rotten people. Not nearly as nice as this bunch. You have it in your mind, and you'll lose your house, and you'll lose your car. Your husband or your wife will hate you. And your children won't have a nice Christmas, and they're going to think you're a meanie. And you have to see how this thing can go. And guess what? It's not just you're thinking that that's what's going to happen. Your mind's creating these pictures in its head, you know? I can just see it now. My children crying on Christmas Eve because Mommy got fired or Daddy got fired because they didn't do their job right. I can just see it now, you know? The bank posting my name in the newspaper, foreclosure. You know? As if the whole world would. And what happens as soon as you create those pictures? You just had a picture in your mind about a lemon. You had an experience. All right? You create that picture in your mind about, ain't it going to be awful? Your body reacts just the same as if a Bengal tiger walked right in the room. It doesn't know the difference. It has no ability to know the difference until you tell it so. Oh, wait a minute. It's not going to be that bad. You know, you start thinking, well, I can do this, or I can do that, or I can save my job, or I can sell the house instead of letting it get taken away, or, you know, I can sell the kids instead of having Christmas. There are all kinds of options. You start thinking of your options, then those pictures of, you know, disaster start to go away. But if you don't change those pictures of disaster, your body reacts with this physical tension, ready to spring for action, to fight or to flee. And then you come to work with those feelings. And I don't know, probably nobody here ever does this, but you start barking at people. Why? Why would you act angry when you know, you're concerned about your job? Or your marriage? Or any of those kinds of things. God, if I get a divorce, I'm a failure. Well, join half of California. We're all failures. It's going to be terrible. If I get a divorce, it'll be my fault because he or she's such a wonderful person. Okay, you bought that bill of goods. Maybe you should get divorced so you don't have to think that way anymore. I don't know. What's going to happen to you if you lose your job and then you start thinking that stuff? You come into work and you know, biting that. You can't bite at the customers because I'm a customer, right? So I don't let you do that to me. But you start barking at each other. Why would people bark at each other when they're under stress? What do you think's going on underneath all that?
Like guilt or
Guilt?
release of frustration.
There's guilt. There's a need to release this.
Leave me alone, my world's falling apart.
Leave me alone. It's a way of pushing people away.
Yeah.
And what would be the purpose of pushing them away?
Not to talk about it.
And you don't want to talk about it because of what?
Because you're failing.
Failure. And if people see that you're a failure, what's going to happen?
They think less of you.
They're going to think less of you. Okay? And then what's going to happen to your life if people think less of you?
It's going to for sure fall apart.
Yeah, Chicken Little will be right. The sky's going to fall on your head, and it'll be all your fault. Okay? And what are you doing? All this time is you're fantasizing. What are you fantasizing about? Are the manifestations of probably the primary emotion behind all stress, which is fear. I forget, one time I was watching Johnny Carson, and he was playing the role of an IRS supervisor or something like that. And he says, he was a community relations person for the IRS. And he says, we have a way of trying to get you to know us. And he says, what we do first at the IRS is we find out what you owe in tax. Okay? And then we estimate what you're going to have to pay next year. And then we assess the difference. And then we report this to the government. And it spells F-E-A-R. That's the IRS, right? Anybody ever dealt with them? He's right. When people act their ugliest, when they're angry and hostile, when they're distant, it's all because they're afraid. They're afraid of the failure. They're afraid of you seeing them underneath for who they really are. Everybody's afraid. That's why we act this way. So we push people away so they can't see us. And that's one of the social consequences of stress, getting a little ahead of ourselves here, is that you tend to push people away and your social relationships begin to suffer. Not just at work, but you might do that with family, friends, children. And so one barometer for me is how much stress am I under. One way of me getting some feedback about that is what is the quality of my personal relationships right now? How am I getting along? And if it's not too good, then I have two possible choices here, I suppose. Either they're brain damaged and I'm okay, and if they were not brain damaged, they would realize what a wonderful person I am, and they would change, and they would get along with me. Isn't that the way most of us probably operate most of the time? I'm okay, you're nuts. Or the other option would be, I'm not okay, and they could be. They might be okay. They might be happy and satisfied and like themselves and those kinds of things, and I might be the one who's acting terrible. God forbid that should be true, because guess who has to change now? You. It's just easier to make the other people wrong so that they have to change. So what I'd like to do is take a look at the quality, do a little assessment once in a while. I think in AA they call that taking inventory. And see how I'm doing. How are my relationships going? Not going real well. Instead of blaming them, maybe I ought to look at what I could be doing differently, because I probably have some stress that I'm taking out in my relationships. Okay, the next thing I'd like to do, pass these around. Take one and pass them around. Pass them back. Thank you. And you need a pencil. Does everybody have something to write with? Not have something to write with? We have a bunch of stuff that Debbie has donated. Originally at the University of Washington Medical School, and later refined at the Naval Hospital at Bethesda by a physician and a psychologist. It's the Holmes-Rahe scale of stress. And what I'd like you to do is take a look at each one of those items that are on the page and check off the things that you've gone through, say within the last 6 to 12 months. We'll just take a few minutes to go ahead and do that. Just check off the ones that you've gone through. Anybody have a mortgage under $10,000? I want to find out how you did it.
Do ex-in-laws count?
What's that?
Trouble with in-laws.
If you've had trouble with them within the last 6 to 12 months, yeah, they would
Even
count.
if they're ex-in-laws?
Sure, whatever their title is. Pseudo-in-laws, ex-in-laws, outlaws. If there are any extras in the back, to bring them forward so that if anybody else needs one.
Oh, yeah. We'll mark it up if they do it. I thought.
Does everybody have one of these?
I think so. If you can ask us to ask these, we'll have to Yeah.
In the last 6 to 12 months.
I had to find that. I should mark it. Yeah. Death of spouse.
Death of a spouse. Go get another one.
Regina. Don't be so sure.
Okay, how are we doing on this? When you're done checking off the things that you've been through out of the 42 things on the list, what I'd like you to do is to get, if you notice, you have a value for each one of those things you've checked off. The value scores are listed on the right, from 100 down to 11. And you can write that number into the column next to the value score, and then get a total for your value score altogether, the sum of all those scores.
Do you have a calculator?
No. You guys are in banking
Yeah,
business?
really.
Yeah, you probably
That's the problem.
Yeah. You have a calculator? Pass it around. I wish they had those calculators when I was taking college chemistry instead of having to use slide rules and stuff like that, because I was terrible with that stuff. But cut my homework down in half. Go ahead and get your total stress points. These are stress points.
The highest wins, right?
And just like in golf, you want a low score. But this is a tool that you would use to take stock of how much stress am I under, just periodically. Maybe take it every 6 months. Go through this again. Now let's take a look at this list. And take a look at your total. How many people have a total of 300 or above? Okay. How many people have totals between 150 and 300? How many people have totals under 150? If you have totals under 150, you're probably managing pretty well. You probably don't have a lot of stress right now. And you're probably not likely to become physically ill within the next 6 months. Okay?
Meaning all this good shit.
All this good change, right. If you have scores of 300 or above, you have been through so many changes in the last 6 to 12 months that you're probably under a good deal of stress. You're having difficulty managing that stress. And statistically, it's saying that the possibility of you developing an illness, it could be the flu for all you know, within the next 6 months is probably 3 to 4 times greater than people that have a score below 150. Let's take a look at the list a little bit. People in between, you're somewhere in between there. You're probably pretty safe, but you wouldn't want to add too many more stress points to your life within the next few months so that you can keep your score below 300. You ever see, there was years ago a book out that was called How to Lie with Statistics? Because you can do that.
Marshall, when you say that, I'm looking here, and a lot of these are positive, though, like change in financial status.
That's right.
Well, if it's more money, that's less stress for me.
No.
No?
No. Any change in your environment will cause you to be alert to that change, which will cause this state of physical arousal, which will be defined as stress to you. I mean, if I've been hearing that commercial on the radio that I'm really a rich person in a poor house and I'm going to win the lottery, If somebody came to me and said, Marshall, here's $40 million, we give it to you because you're just a wonderful guy, I'd say, yeah, Jack, where's the strings? You know, is this money from the Confederacy or what? You know, are we talking lira? You know, what is this? Because in my mental concept, I can't handle that right now. It's too much for me. I would have to go through too many lifestyle changes to deal with that. Even though $40 million sounds real good right now. It'd be a welcome change, but a very stressful one. And I know that there's been a show recently with these people that have won the lottery, and they go through a lot of difficult changes as a result of having gotten wealthy instantly. Okay? You do notice that there are a number of positive changes here.
Vacation.
Getting married,
Yeah.
having a vacation,
Yeah.
Christmas.
Christmas. Bah humbug. Especially when you're so close to the mall and you have to drive through that stuff because it's Christmas. You know? Yes?
Why does stress affect your body when you stress you down and all this?
Yeah, we're going to get into that and how to deal with that before the night's over. The changes that you go through do not have to be negative. Okay? They can be positive changes. The birth of a child. Welcomed event for most of us. But it's stress. More women endorse that than men.
Yeah,
Okay? But look at the first 10 or 15 of those and realize how much of those center on difficulties or changes in relationships. Death of a spouse, number 1. 100 points automatically off the top. Got it. Divorce, 73, not much less. Your primary support system in your relationship in the world is probably through your spouse, and divorce and death of that individual causes you to go through so many difficult changes in your life in such a short period of time that it's just very, very stressful. When my grandfather died, everybody was real worried about my grandmother being able to, you know, she was getting up there in years herself, really worried about her being able to cope with all those changes after I had 60 years of marriage and having depended on my grandfather for all those years. And she's still alive, well into her, 80s or so, and doing great. You know, she takes cruises all the time. She plays bridge with her girlfriends or whatever she plays, and that kind of stuff. The first year was awful. And doctors are very, very cautious with patients that come in with physical complaints, and they've lost a spouse, say, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. They treat those patients much more carefully because they realize they need a little extra care because they're going through more than probably any of their other patients is going through at the time. Marital separation, just in itself, you get plenty of points. How much is that? 65? Jail term, you're not going to have many good relationships in jail. Guarantee that. So you realize how many of those top 10 or 12, 15 have a change in relationship as a source of stress. So why not just live and be a hermit someplace and not have any changes in relationships because you have done? You know? I mean, in some level, that would be less stressful, wouldn't it? Well, then how come married people live longer than single people do? You've been there. You've been the hermit?
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd it go? You didn't like that? Okay. Most people don't survive Hermitville very well, you know, because we just have an innate need to be touched, an innate need to relate and belong to people, to socialize, and to feel connected to something that's bigger than just our own little life. And if that need weren't there, then you'd probably have a lot less stress if you could just hide someplace. Some people try to hide someplace, but it doesn't work. They find out that even though there's stress in relationships, it's worth going through it. And I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, Annie Hall. It was a long time since I had seen it, and I'd forgotten about the last line in that movie is Woody Allen talking about this crazy relationship that he has with Diane Keaton in the movie. And he says that relationships remind him about the joke about the guy who goes to see the psychiatrist and says, "Doc, my brother thinks he's a chicken." And the psychiatrist says, well, you better bring them in. And the guy says, well, we can't do that. Why not? Well, we need the eggs. Yeah? And what he was saying, the reason people are in relationships is because they think they need the eggs. You know? They get something from it, and it's worth going through all this craziness to get the eggs. I guess just the way life is. Fired from work is 47. I mean, that's a hefty chunk of change here to have to carry around with you. Unless, of course, if you got fired and you got a better job, like hitting the streets and finding something, and you say, yeah, that getting fired was a great opportunity for me. You can change that into a positive sometimes. Like I said, number 19, I don't know anybody. Well, yeah, I do know one guy who's an insurance agent in Vista who has a mortgage under $10,000 because he stayed in the house for the last 18 years. That's how he's got a mortgage under $10,000. Any change in social activities, it doesn't matter. Number 35, you decided to take a class in Maricosta College. How many points do you get for that? 18 points. So I guess if you stood absolutely still and didn't talk to anybody, that would be the solution. But it doesn't seem that we're able to do that. So stress is inherent in life. You have to have it. The thing about how to control it is to get some kind of a plan of how many changes you're going to be willing to go through in any given period of time. So, for instance, if you've got 225, say, stress points right now, and your children are about to leave the house because they're getting older now, and you and the wife or the husband are talking about selling your house and moving to a smaller house, and you're thinking about maybe working half-time instead of full-time, or maybe just packing your trash and getting out of Southern California and going someplace else and not letting the kids know where you are. I knew somebody who did that. You may want to rethink how soon you want to go through all those changes, because you're going to get a lot of stress points for that. You're going to go way over 300 if you do all those things at once. Yeah?
Can you create this stress by thinking about those things?
Sure.
I've reached the point where sometimes I'm going through all the different things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
There's too many to do at one time?
yeah. You got a plan. Maybe you shouldn't try to plan it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to try to plan it all at one time. So what I try to do is to create a timeline with myself, you know, and just take it for the next 12 months, and here's 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And take one chunk at a time. You know, if I've got 4 things I'd like to do with my life, and I want them all right now, I better be willing to pay with the risks of, you know, I could have a stroke. That would be one of the risks. Or I might become so impossible to live with. Oh, you know, besides leaving Southern California, you might decide to start a new business of your own. Yeah, that would even be great. You know, be an entrepreneur. So you have all these different goals and aspirations and changes you want to make in your life. And in the last 6 months, you know, you went through a separation or a divorce. The kids are growing and leaving and, you know, getting out of the house. You know, you've got a career change. All this other kind of stuff's going on. You had some major surgery done, you know, and now you want to do these other things. Think a minute here. Use this as a tool to plan that out. So maybe I'll take one of the smaller changes and do that here. Just do one of them. And let myself kind of level off for 3 or 6 months before I do another one. I may not do another one for 6 months. 6 more months. Because if I do too much at one time, you end up being overwhelmed, which is another one of the, you know, aspects of stress, is that people get confused. It's another thing that people feel when we're going through those lists of experiences when they're stressed. How about confusion? Can't think straight. Can't concentrate. Nothing seems to be able to get clear to you. And that could show up at work. Nobody here's ever out of balance, though, right? Never happened
I've been out
once.
in the parking lot when the lights are still on.
Yes. Okay.
Marshall, what about vacation? Why is that a stressful? I mean,
Because it's an unfamiliar thing to you. It's not in your normal everyday routine. Routine has a tendency to create a feeling of predictability in your life that you can kind of like not even think about. You just walk through it. If you don't have to think about it, you don't have to get stressed about it. But as soon as planning one can be stressful, especially if you and your husband are planning it, and you don't agree about where you're going to go.
yeah, right. Or how much money you're going to
Or how much money you're going to spend. Yeah. And my wife and I have different ideas where the next vacation should be. So I just saw a movie called Separate Vacations, but I don't think that's going to be us. So yeah, it's just a change that involves you to think and to react to something that's new.
How about, I think I could add one thing to this list is, when another, like my husband, is under extreme stress, it tends to rub off on him. He owns his own business, and he goes through tax times, difficult times, and contractors and stuff. And God, when he's under stress, it rubs off on me.
Yeah, it's emotional contagion. It's like a virus, and you catch it.
Yeah.
And so he comes home grouchy, irritable, and snapping at you, and your natural response, of course, is to want to snap back, to get him, to push him away, and he's a fight waiting to happen, so you just play right into what he wants. Right? Now, he doesn't consciously know that that's what he wants, but that's what he's looking for, because he needs to release all this tension, and fighting is a way to release the tension at the moment, but if it creates a divorce, stress points. So you have to, and this is real hard, I think, for women to capture, because when a man does that kind of stuff, he's having what we call an anima attack. It's like he's becoming the male version of bitchiness, And when a man gets bitchy, you have to leave him alone.
That
If
goes
he wants,
both ways, right?
huh?
That goes both ways.
Yeah, it would work real well. If it were, possible at all, just leave the person alone. I've walked into the house, and people in my house have had a bad day, and I've had a wonderful day. I said, I've had a wonderful day. It looks like you've had a real bear of a day, and I'm going to continue to have a good one, so later. And I love you, and I know you're going to get out of it, but I'm not joining the misery company here. It happens. Why should you make yourself miserable because this other person you love and care about is feeling terrible? Well, the hook for that, particularly for women, is that women think that they're supposed to nurture us. They're supposed to make us feel better. They're going to kiss it and make it go away, just like Mommy did. Too much to handle. It's not your job. And men, you're supposed to make her happy. You're supposed to please your woman. Well, if she doesn't want to be pleased, you're beating your head up against a brick wall. Why should you go through all that tumult so that you can end up frustrated? But we think we're supposed to make you happy. And you want us to believe it, don't you? Okay, so this is kind of a tool that you can use at home to kind of take stock of how are we doing so far? Do I want to live a lifestyle that's filled with stress? I'm having lunch on Friday with a good friend of mine who's a school psychologist and counselor who has the same licenses and training and experience as I do. And he could certainly go out into the private sector and open up a private practice and do exactly what I do. But he prefers to work 3/4 time for the school district. Why? Because the eggs taste rotten to him. It's too much stress for him. He doesn't want any part of it. Because being in private business is stressful. And he chooses not to put himself into that kind of stress. The stresses that he has working for a bureaucracy, he'd rather deal with those. He can deal with those more effectively. And the trade-off to him is very simple. He feels better. Yeah.
Some of us feel stress
Differently. That's right.
maybe a 300 for one person.
Right. Now, some people require stress to be motivated. There's a certain amount of stress, a certain level of stress that's necessary. If you've got below 100 points of stress, you're probably not out in the world enough Because all those things involve, being out there involved in the world. You could be living a very sedate life and not have any adrenaline flowing through your system to make you feel alive. There's a balance here. And I know a man personally who's a multimillionaire and owns 7 corporations, and he thrives on it. He has to have stress all the time. He likes the feeling of being on a thin layer of ice and seeing if he can skate past the danger zone. If he can't do that, he'd rather check out and have a stroke anyway. I can't help him. This is what he's conscious of what he's doing, and he chooses to do it knowing that he's a ticking time bomb. And he is. 50 years old, overweight, smokes too much, drinks too much, doesn't exercise, and works, until he drops 6-7 days a week. Because he loves it. So why should he see me? We socialize, and he's not going to come see me.
What happens to his family?
It's awful. Or somebody like me, yeah. It takes its toll someplace. The Greeks had a notion. Everything goes back to the Greeks somehow. I don't know why that happens that way. But the Greeks had a notion that to live a healthy life, they had to live a life that was balanced. And the only mistake that they made was they didn't have enough information about physiology to know that the balances that they were talking about really didn't exist. They thought there were 4 humors, they called them, or fluids in the body. And you had to balance these things through various activity in your life. But the basic idea was correct. If you look at your lifestyle as consisting of 4 basic areas, these are activities, basically, that you need to be involved in some balanced manner. There's the physical. Your physical life needs to be taken care of, and that includes things like working, because without work, you're not going to get money. Without money, you're not going to pay for your bills. You're not going to have food or heat or water, and you're going to die, Terrible fantasy, wasn't it? So there's work and working out. And going to the doctor and things like that for checkups. Just taking care of your physical self and your basic survival needs. There's also social. Being with people. You have a need to be social. If you work all the time in a job at a computer, and you never talk to anybody all day long, and I see somebody like that in my office, who has no relationships, basically, other than to the people she's on the other end of the terminal with, you starve yourself of your social life. And it takes its toll. Because you don't get the nurturing and support from people that could be available to you, should you be willing to put some energy into this, some time and effort. Then there's mental. And I have a friend from New York City who believes there are no mental activities in Southern California. But you need to stimulate yourself mentally, and that mean like learning something new, taking a class, seeing something that you haven't seen before, going to the aquarium. I don't care what it is, but stimulate your mind. Reading the newspaper, as negative as that can be, I resist it like crazy. Because all I hear about is people getting bombed, shot, and all this other kind of stuff. But there is some stimulating news in there, so I try to filter this other junk out and thumb through the stuff that sounds interesting about what's happening in San Diego and all that kind of stuff. There are things that you can learn. Learning is an important part of this here. Okay. And then finally, there's spiritual. And spiritual, for some of you, may include going to church, and for others of you, may have nothing to do with going to church. I go to the beach, and for me, that's a spiritual experience, because what I realize is that in my life,
I am such a tiny little speck in the universe and the importance of the world that there's something so much bigger than me out here. And that's what spiritual is. It's getting connected to know that your own little life in the great cosmic course of things is so tiny. You know, it's like when you go camping and you're laying out on a mountain and it's nighttime and you can see the galaxy, how small and insignificant you can feel, but that gives you a sense of belonging to something big. And if you don't do something to create that kind of sensation in your life, you become immersed with yourself. Your own self-importance, your own self-problems. You know, it just becomes too enveloping. And you need to do spiritual things to get you out of this perspective that the world revolves around you. And ain't it awful? The whole world's awful because you feel awful. When I have a terrible day and I go down to the beach and I'm looking at the water and I'm feeling really angry or hurt or depressed or whatever it is, every once in a while I just remember the thought that, I was here last week and I was looking at that same beach and I thought it was beautiful. Right now I couldn't care less. Now that beach hasn't changed at all. I did. And if I want to enjoy that beach, I better do something. It's up to me to make the change. Okay, so if you don't spend some time, I'm not saying they have to be equal amounts of time, but adequate enough time for you to have stimulation, physical well-being, a social support system, and a sense of being connected to something bigger than just you. You don't have that enough of the time, your life gets out of balance. And so if you're a workaholic, you're taking care of your physical needs probably most of the time, with maybe some social needs smattered in there. And maybe, unless you have a job that you're at the think tank at IBM or Remington Corporation, and you're one of the country's few bona fide geniuses that can think up new ways of using anything that we come up with, then you don't get that kind of mental stimulation in your job. You might get some. I knew that I had to be in a job that provided me mental stimulation or I would die. Because I worked in jobs where I didn't have mental stimulation. I used to load freight in Watts. That wasn't mental stimulation, that was fear. So I just waited for my box with my number on it to come down my conveyor belt, and I would take number 6 off the conveyor belt and put it on the platform. And when my platform was full, I'd take all my stuff and put it on that truck behind me. I did that 45 hours a week, I thought I was going to die. So you need that involved in your work, but you can't get this all met in just one place. It's not really possible to get an adequate amount of time spent in each one of those areas from just one single activity. So how you spend your leisure time is an important part of how to control stress. Now, if you're not convinced that you need to control stress, let's just review quickly. What are the effects of stress? Mentally, what I see in my office most often is anxiety, panic attacks, pain, physical pain, okay? Depression, 2 types. There's agitated depression where you're so sad and lonely all the time that you hate the world and everyone in it and you want them to suffer just like you, okay? Or there's vegetative depression, which is the kind where you want to pull the covers over your head in bed and never come out again. And you just can't seem to get out of bed. You just can't seem to function. Socially, you're grouchy, your relationships suffer, and another one that we didn't mention yet is how critical you can get. You ever notice, because I know it's one of my favorite pastimes, and one of the things that I do on vacation is go to a different city and with my wife and sit in a public place and secretly make fun of all the people that are walking by. It is so much of a relief. I don't have to worry about anybody I'm going to see or know or any of that kind of stuff. It's just a way of me ventilating my frustration and my anxiety and my stress. Okay? Look at the bimbo and the bozo, that kind of stuff. Now, if you are in important relationships and you find that those relationships are characterized by a lot of criticalness, And there's a lot of gossip at work about, did you see what she did? You know? It's likely that you're under a great deal of pressure. And you need to take that pressure off you because this other person's probably innocent of all the sins that you're accusing him or her of. So how critical have I been of people lately? And how much criticism am I getting from others? As another way that I use to get some feedback about how much stress do I really have in my life. You know? And if I'm getting real judgmental about the people I normally care about, that's a signal to me. As bad a signal as if I had played basketball and hurt my knee, and the pain in my knee is saying, you tore something in here, you better go to the doctor and fix it. The criticalness in my relationships is a signal. There's something wrong in my life. You know, I better go do something to correct that because I'm letting everybody else have it. You can get argumentative. Being right is the only purpose in life, correct? You ever have arguments with your spouse? Married couples do this the best. Who's going to be right? You're going to beat him to death or beat her to death until they say, Uncle, you're right. You know? And of course you can be alone and be right. They could leave and say, I'm tired of being wrong. If you're right, somebody's got to be wrong. And when that happens, you create distance in your relationships. And you're not going to get the bennies. You're not going to get the eggs. You lose the eggs by being right. So what do we do about this? Well, stress, as you can see, has two basic components. One is the physical arousal, and the other is change going on around you. Okay? All this change that you're having to contend with and attend to is going on around you, and you want to do something to control it. Well, what I suggested earlier is that you plan how many changes you're willing to go through in a given time. And one of the variables that you need to put into there is what stage of life are you in? Because there are some developmental changes, unfortunately, that you just can't control. You know, like turning retirement age, okay, or hitting midlife. My time of life, right? My brother-in-law, my sister says her husband has hit midlife with a resounding but. He's a stockbroker, by the way. Stress. He's like glued to that terminal. You have to peel him away, you know. So there are certain changes that you have to go through just as your natural maturation. And you wouldn't want to plan any unnecessary changes around those periods of time. Turning 30 for me was awful. I sat in my office on my 30th birthday, and I saw all these degrees on the wall, and I was working that day. It was the middle of the week, and I said, Christ, there went my 20s. There went a decade of my life hanging on the wall. Was I angry? And what I had to come to is realize that all those things that I did during my 20s, nobody twisted my arm, made me do that. I was just tired of loading freight once. I decided to do something different. I chose that. There's no one to be angry at. And now that it was over, I could enjoy it instead of being angry about it. So after a few months, I started working that out and realized, I didn't have to be angry. It was okay. I made a good choice. So planning changes is important rather than allowing changes to just happen to you. If you have the notion that life happens to you, I want you to wake up and realize that you create this life. You're the director of it. And you need to make some conscious decisions about what changes you're willing to go through. Anybody here a military dependent? Or in the military? Yeah. There's some changes imposed upon you that are, some of them predictable and some of them not. Because the military may decide that we need your spouse in Okinawa, you get to stay home. That happens periodically, and you can guess that. Some of them are not very predictable, like, we're going to go invade Grenada and we need him. These things happen. Depends on what he does in the military. You can't control those kinds of changes because somebody else is kind of handing the cards to you. But how did you get there in the first place? Well, you fell in love with somebody in the military, right? You chose that, didn't you? I guess so. Darn right. My wife chose to marry a psychologist who works at night. She didn't work at night.
So Marshall, is that the same idea as far as us being in the banking business when we had a customer in on Thursday that was very stressful to the point that, we felt that we needed to call the police. And that to me, I think all of us have been through before. And that's a very stressful situation. And
Yeah, you chose to be in the banking business, and people are crazier about their money than they are about anything else in life. They would rather talk about sex. Okay? When you're out with couples, if you notice, people will talk about sex once in a while. They'll talk about their kids a lot. Because kids, sex, and money are the three battlegrounds for a marriage. Okay? And they'll talk about their kids a lot. And they'll talk about sex once in a while, unless there's a problem, a big problem with sex. And they almost never talk about who did what to the money. It's just a no-no. People are nuts about money. And it attacks their feelings of basic security and stuff. And you get somebody walking in here who thinks that you made a big mistake with them or something like that. You're talking to somebody who's not with the real world. At that point, okay?
so we all need to hear that, though. How to, we need to, so you're saying just...
What you don't want to do is to allow yourself to get emotionally caught up in their panic. You have to soothe, let your voice stay calm and even. You have to really make good eye contact. You have to act, even if you're not, real concerned about what has happened and how can we fix it. Okay? If you get into a battle of who was right and who was wrong, you've lost that because he came in here knowing you were wrong. And for some people, if it feels safe, just a physical touch on the arm is soothing enough to get them to calm down. Sometimes when people are afraid, what they really want is to be hugged. Because their basic fear is that nobody cares about them. And if you show that you care about them, they kind of like do this. It's real hard to do when you're...
But we didn't care.
Yeah,
that point,
and if you don't care, you say, hey, here's your bank book and here's your account, and go to Home Federal, right? Especially if this is a repetitious kind of thing, and it's draining people on the staff constantly and making it difficult for you to deal with your good customers like me. You don't want to lose us. So, your management, you have to discuss that and see if this is somebody we're willing to let go of. But if it's not, then remember not to get all caught up in this panic. They're just acting nuts because they're dealing with the thing that scares them the most, and that is that nobody cares about me, and that's why you're messing with my money. You're just going to take a piece of my flesh, and you don't care what happens to me. Now, stress, in addition to being important for you to control the changes in your life, it's important for you to control your physical arousal. Years ago, it was thought that there were certain responses in the body that were automatic and we had no control over them, and we know now that that's not true. We know that there are techniques available for you to gain a great deal of control over your state of physical arousal, even if you are in a stressful situation. By the way, there was a survey done on what causes people stress and what are people most afraid of. And what I'm doing right now is number one, speaking in public. Number one, in America anyway, was having to address a group of people. I think I'm more afraid of the IRS than that. They scare the heck out of me. I mean, that's, this country's form of the Gestapo. There are all kinds of ways to control stress. You've probably heard of some of them. Some of them include things like self-hypnosis. There's a technique called progressive relaxation. There's drugs. You can always get into drugs. But be willing to pay the consequence, because all drugs have toxicities. If you pick up the physician's desk reference, the PDR that you can go as a price code, you can go buy. Anybody can buy it. Every single drug, over 5,000 of them in there, they all have a section called toxicity. What does toxicity mean? This stuff's poison. This stuff is not good for you. It's going to destroy something in your body should you take it long enough or enough of it. And some things can take care of you right away. Alcohol, every little sip of it, kills just a few brain cells. Of course, you have trillions of them, so it's no big deal. But if you drink on a regular basis, over a number of years, you got, chicken fat in there, basically. Because when nerve cells die, they die. They're dead. They don't rejuvenate like your skin does or something like that. So you can get into drugs. The other thing that drugs have is a thing called tolerance, which is what used to be something that you can feel good with, with just one pill. Now you need 6. You need more of the drug to produce the same effect of relaxation. And almost all drugs have tolerance. Most of the relaxant drugs like Valium, the benzodiazepines, Valium and Librium, Xanax, they all have tolerances. And some of them have addictive effects. And you all know what addiction is. You need to have it to function. Or you get into the harmless drugs like marijuana, right? Very harmless drug. Probably the biggest effect with marijuana is what I call the amotivational effects, which is that you don't want to do nothing. You just mellow. Okay? And I know guys that stayed mellow for 25 years. And they're not doing anything. Still. One of them with a master's degree in engineering. The guy's just a bona fide genius. Not doing anything. A waste of a life. I met him at 15 years ago at a fair where he was selling tie-dye clothes to make money, and he's probably still doing something like that. Okay. Now, other techniques other than drugs include things also like biofeedback, which is an electronic way of amplifying what's going on inside your body and giving that information back to you so that you can then control it. And what this particular instrument does, that we use in the office sometimes, is monitor galvanic skin response, which is roughly a measure of what activity there's going on in your sweat glands. Because if you remember, when you get aroused with stress, your sweat glands start to get activated so that you can get ready to cool the body down as it begins to do all this work about running away from the tiger and stuff. Okay? So if you had this information, if you knew what your sweat glands are doing, we know that you can learn to control them. But most of us don't have this information until it's too late. This amplifies the information so you get it very quickly. And all it does, that's dangerous. I'm going to gasp for air. Tone went up, needle goes to the right. My sweat glands are getting ready for activity. Okay? In fact, it's so ready for activity, I pinned the thing all the way to the end. I can manipulate the needle this way, too. So what we teach people to do, motion does it too, we teach people to do is to make the tone go down and make the needle move to the left. That's all I have to tell you. Leave you on this long enough, and you'll figure it out. Now, sometimes people can't even tell me with words, what did they do to make the needle go down to the left and the tone to go down? They can't tell me what they did to do it, but they did it anyway. And that's all that matters. And then what you can do is wean people from these instruments so that they don't need to, carry this around. They do have, I've been waiting to put this in a sharper image catalog. They do have, the Japanese, of course, have gotten into the market. So they have pocket-sized stuff for that. You just put it in your pocket, wire it down your shirt, sapo presto, you're ready to roll. And you just take this thing out of your pocket every 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you time it for, because it tells you when it's time to take me out and look at how we're doing. And you turn the thing on and it tells you, oh, too much stress, Craig, you're going to have to relax. And you spend 30 to 60 seconds relaxing, and the values on the meter go down, and then this tone goes off, and you know you're okay, and you put the thing back in your pocket, you go back to work for the next time period. So biofeedback is a way of directly controlling stress by lowering the physical arousal. The other techniques are also effective. They all lead toward the same result, which is lessening physical arousal. Not all techniques, not any technique works for all people. Self-hypnosis works well for some people. It works lousy for others. Biofeedback works real well for a lot of people. It works lousy for others. So it's best to try different things. Because everybody learns differently. All of us learn differently. So which technique you use taps into a different way of learning. Hypnosis is primarily an auditory technique. Yeah.
I was just reviewing in my head what we talked about, and there's one thing I can think of which I think is stress, and I think people do it and do it myself. Self-imposed stress.
Self-imposed?
In order to show somebody that I care, I'm going to tense up and I'm going to move faster and I'm going to, I don't know how to describe it. Self-imposed, like, I'm proving you, I'm working harder and faster, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Just like my mother, she proves that she cares about you by worrying about you. Now, I'm not worried. You know. Now, if you want to, worry is a form of self-imposed stress. So what I suggest to people that want to involve themselves in self-imposed stress is set up a stress time for yourself. Give yourself an hour a day to worry yourself to a frazzle. Call it your worry hour. Okay? And keep a little spirograph, notebook next to you with a pencil and during the day or in your purse or your pocket. And if you forgot to worry about something during your worry hour, write it down so that you can worry about it tomorrow. And if you're thinking that you need to impress somebody by getting really tense and, God, I'm working so hard, look at the headache I've got, Then schedule your headaches for, an hour after work and come back to work the next morning more relaxed. But sometimes you do need to schedule worry time, stress time, because you do need to think about things that are problematic. I mean, if you have things that need to be solved, you don't have the answers yet, that causes you stress. But if you think about them all the time, you're under chronic stress, and that's when you start falling prey to things like headaches, migraines, my favorite, gastric ulcers, backaches, lower backaches. In fact, some of the research is starting to come out that if you maintain a high level of stress long enough, your immune system is affected drastically, and you're more prone to develop life-threatening illnesses. Because your immune system is what fights off bacteria, viruses, and other foreign objects in your body so that they don't take a hold in you. And the theory is that people with cancer, in fact, the theory is that all of us have cancer. The theory is that we might have 2 or 3 cells in our body a day that are cancerous cells. But we have these little, what they call phagocytes, that come up and chomp them up, destroy them. And that's part of your immune system. Well, if that immune system's not operating very well, one of those little cancer cells is going to slip right on by and find a home someplace. So the theory is that people who develop or are more prone to develop cancers are people that need to learn to control stress. And if you have cancer, you've got a lot of stress that you need to control because you're all worried. The scare word of this probably the century. Well, maybe AIDS, I don't know. AIDS made everybody forget about herpes. Took over. Any other questions about what you can do to control stress? Yeah.
You touched on something I thought you were a little on about leisure time.
Yeah.
I tend to be do a lot of projects over the weekend, and I think it doesn't always fit well with my family. Maybe I should find that.
I mean, that causes stress for them or for you?
For me, because I don't get things done that I want everybody to do. For them, because they'd rather sit than paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, different people have different energy levels. I think you could see that in babies in the nursery. Some of them are real active and moving around and stuff and crying and howling, all that kind of stuff, and others are just, snores good. And if you have a high activity level and the people around you don't, you're not going to get them to change. No matter what you do, all they're going to do is complain. The other thing is that causes a lot of stress in leisure time is imposing time schedules on yourself during your leisure. And I'm going to finish the living room by 3 o'clock. If it's 3 o'clock and it's not done, I'm a pile of dirt. Why do that to yourself? The important thing to remember in that is that you just created a mental picture about how terrible it's going to be and how hard it's going to be for you to be done by 3 o'clock, and ain't it going to be awful if you're not done by 3 o'clock, what does this mean about you? You're a bad mother, or you're a bad father, a bad housekeeper, a bad employee, bad.
Or just plain slow.
Or just plain slow. And you know what slow means? MRI. Yeah, but it's a habit. And anything that's habitual is something that you learned. Anything that you've learned, if you're willing to put the energy into it, you can unlearn it and replace it with something different. It's a proven fact that anything you've learned, you can unlearn and replace it with something different. So when I'm, on the freeway, see, I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was conditioned to those freeways. It would take me an hour to go 10 miles to school, and I'm like this all that time. So now we're starting to have more traffic around here, and I'm back to this. Especially where I live in Vista, it's like, how dare they put cars in Vista? Right down Santa Fe, it's just like, I might as well be in Beverly Hills on a Friday afternoon. It's just like packed. So what I can do while I'm sitting here in my car, and I remember doing this in Los Angeles, I just had forgotten, was that I could choose to enjoy this time somehow. So thank God I have a tape player in my car, and I can listen to a lecture on a different form of doing counseling, or I can listen to some music that I want to listen to, or I can even turn on Tony Grant and laugh it up. Anybody listen to her? The psychologist who does therapy on the radio? It's a lot of fun. It's radio's little soap hour. So I can choose to experience this differently. I can choose peace instead of this. And when I think of that, I said, boy, what an idiot. What kind of fool would choose this instead of peace? My mother didn't give birth to any fools. So I'm going to choose to feel peaceful. It doesn't always work, but it works more than it doesn't. And if it works at all, it's better than what I started with. What I'd like to do before we close, I'll put the slide past this around. This is just a feedback sheet for me and for you. This also gives you a little bit of information about what we're doing at the office in the coming weeks, things that we're doing about classes and seminars and stuff like that. And if you could take the time to fill that out real quick, I'd appreciate it. And as soon as you're done with that, let me know, because I'm going to teach you a method of reducing physical tension. Real simple method. It is so simple, you will think, why didn't I think of this before? Okay, and if there are any extras, let's pass it back up to the front. Thank you. Has anybody here ever been hypnotized? No? Anybody ever been down to see Michael Dean down in San Diego? Yeah, he's really a fabulous hypnotist. Yeah, you can speak right on out. That's okay.
for real, right?
Yeah. No, that's for real. That's stage hypnotism, but it's for real. And, think about how come he's able to do that.
Well, they all love it. It's like they rush out, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just said, that's something like that, 'cause I wouldn't want to be a
It's in a dinner club, right?
Yeah. Oh, I guess. I went at night late.
You have a drink?
Oh, yeah.
You had a couple drinks there?
Yeah.
Okay. So right away he's got you into physical relaxation
Although he
because,
didn't want people to have very much to drink.
yeah, not very much, just enough.
Yeah, he threw people off the stage.
Yeah. Maybe 1, maybe 2 drinks is enough to have a therapeutic effect to cause muscles to relax. Now, why did you go there?
Entertainment.
Entertainment. You want to be entertained, right? So now you're relaxed and you want to be entertained. And during this time, he's talking to you constantly. He's always talking to you. Yes. And you kind of get sucked into the rhythm, don't you?
He hypnotized somebody in the audience when I was there. She was just sitting in the audience, and all of a sudden she started running up on stage and moving around.
It was her own idea. Self-hypnosis. You know? So what's he doing? He's implanting ideas about relaxation and fun and entertainment. And while he's doing that, the thing that where his genius is that he can look at that audience and he can tell you exactly who's going to come up before they come up. Because he knows the clinical science of hypnosis. He's a master at it. So he knows who's going to come up to be hypnotized because they're already hypnotized while he's talking. They're already into a trance. Their eyes are open, but they're different. So now he says, would you, sir, like to come up and be a chicken? Sure, I'll be a chicken. Cluck, cluck, cluck. You know? And, and he says, I'm going to touch your arm, you're going to be a chicken. Well, you're already there. You were 3/4 of the way home before you ever walked up on the stage. Because you went there with the intention of having fun. And you didn't mind being part of the fun. Some people don't want to be part of the fun, so they don't volunteer. So even under a state of relaxation or trance, you don't do what you don't want to do. You can't be hypnotized to do something you wouldn't otherwise do. You can't be, quote, brainwashed using hypnosis alone. You can be brainwashed using hypnosis with things like brutality, torture, sleep deprivation, starving. You combine all those things together, and you can create a whole new person. But that's not what's done in San Diego. Hypnosis and relaxation techniques like hypnosis have gotten a pretty bad rap from the movies. I remember that movie with Susan Hayward called The Snake Pit, and she was going insane, and some guy handled a bauble in front of her eyes, says, "You are now under my spell, and you are going back to your childhood," and all this other junk, and she just went into this frenzy, and that's just not what it is. You are under control of yourself in a state of relaxation. A lot of people have difficulty relaxing because they think they're losing control.
Why do they put it
On stage? Because they want to. Because it's fun. And
And
they know exactly what they're doing. At the time they're doing it.
How come, when I saw one and they take the shirt off, the guy took his shirt off, and he said, take your jacket off, he took his jacket off, and he said, take your pants off, and he had him halfway down, when he said, no, don't take your pants off. And he said, why not? So you didn't tell me that he knew that he was ready to take his pants off at that point?
they know, as soon as they wake them up, they know what they have just done.
That's right.
All of a sudden,
Or you could be told you won't remember anything you've done so far.
And you don't remember.
And you don't remember.
But what I don't understand is if they say they can't make you do anything you wouldn't normally do, well, how many people would normally go up to the stage and take clothes off?
Take clothes off.
They went there to be entertained, and they're not objecting to being part of the fun.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
And they're not responsible.
That's right. And they've had a couple drinks and their judgment's impaired.
As I say, if you
Okay.
didn't want to be a part of it, then you wouldn't go.
That's right. That's right. In the first part. That's right.
Well, like we were there for the second show that night, there was a lot of people that tried to take him the first show and he wouldn't take him. By the second one, they were relaxed enough.
That's right.
What happened that they were more, he had a lot of people hypnotized by the second show.
Like that, yeah, a double dose.
Yeah.
Okay. What we're going to do is a simple thing called the countdown technique. And what you need to do is just get comfortable in your chair. This is going to take you maybe at the most 5 minutes, tops. At home, if you do this regularly, you'll be able to do this in about 30 to 60 seconds. And I'd like you to do is take just 2 deep breaths, and on the second breath, as you let it out, just let your eyelids close. Okay, good. For just a moment, just pay attention again to the motion of your body as you breathe. You don't have to change the way you breathe, just notice what's happening. You might even hear the sound of your own breathing. Feel the air moving in and out of your nostrils. And for the next few moments, I'd like you to make the decision that this time is just for you. There's nothing at this very moment that you need to go do. There's nothing that needs to be taken care of. this is time for you to take care of yourself. And now what I'm going to do is very slowly and out loud, I'm going to count backwards from 10 to 1. With each number that I count out, I'm going to suggest that a specific part of your body become incredibly and comfortably relaxed. So that by the time we reach number 5, you will notice that your body feels approximately twice as relaxed as it does at this time. And that certainly by the time we reach number 1, you will have achieved a very deep and profound and pleasant feeling of relaxation. And we're going to begin now with number 10. And focus your attention on the muscles in your feet, allowing them to just kind of unwind inside your shoes, allowing them to grow heavy and warm and relaxed. Nine. Focusing your attention now on the muscles of your lower legs, below your knees, those calf muscles, allowing them to become heavy and limp and relaxed. And as your legs relax, your lower legs relax, you might also get a sensation of warmth or tingling in them. Eight. Focusing all your attention now on the muscles of your upper legs, your thighs, allowing those muscles to unwind right down to the bone, become limp and heavy and relaxed. Seven. Focusing all your attention now on the muscles in your hips and buttocks, allowing them to become loose and relaxed in your chair. Six. Focusing your attention now on the muscles of your belly. I'd like you to imagine that your belly has become so limp and relaxed that it moves effortlessly as you breathe, moving in and out, just like a balloon that's filling with air when you breathe in, and contracting as the air leaves you. Five. Now allowing the relaxation to be double that which it was at the beginning of this procedure. 4. Focusing all your attention now on the muscles of your lower back, upper back, between the shoulder blades especially, right up to the top of the shoulders, allowing them to become loose and relaxed so that your spine is doing all the work of holding your body up. The muscles are just grouping. Three. Focusing now your attention across the top of the shoulders, into the chest, down into the arms, the upper arms, lower arms, and all the way down into the hands and the fingertips, allowing those muscles to become limp and loose and relaxed, as if they were just old wet rags hanging from bone. And again, you might feel a sensation of warmth or pulsing in your hands or arms as you relax. Two. Focus now all your attention on the muscles of your neck and your face, allowing those muscles to unwind as they become heavy and relaxed. The muscles of the neck, jaw, face, the eyes, forehead. You can feel your jaw just hanging like an hinge. One. Becoming aware now from head to toe of a very pleasant, warm, and comfortable feeling of relaxation and calm. Now I'm going to count forwards from 0 to 3, and upon reaching 3, I'd like you to open your eyes, coming back to this room, feeling relaxed and refreshed, but also feeling incredibly alert. 0, 1, 2, 3. And open your eyes, noticing how relaxed and refreshed and alert you feel. How was that for most of you? You asleep yet? Yeah, it's the end of the day, too. This is a countdown technique. If you use it frequently and used it daily for a couple of weeks, you would probably be able to do this eyes open. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Almost that fast. And get this relaxed, if not more relaxed. My clients don't know this, but every once in a while, I'm sitting in my chair going, 10, 9. I do that in my head. I said to myself, the problem with these techniques is that if you don't use them daily and repetitiously, you do not get the benefit from them. It's like anything else. You're going to, learn it. You have to learn it through repetition. The other aspect of this is that stress builds cumulatively. Okay? You just can't have a good weekend and get rid of a lot of stress and think, well, I have had no stress at all, I'm just fine, because all those other changes you're still adapting to, they're still there. Stress needs to be taken care of daily, otherwise it builds daily. For those of you who are interested, I have tapes available. They're $5 each. On side 1 is the technique that we just did with an added, I believe I put in an added mental fantasy of creating, a nice visual image of, being out in the sunny, being out on a sunny day, letting your muscles get warmed up by the sun and that kind of stuff. And on the other side is a relaxation technique that I invented myself, and it's called Granny's Feather Bed. Okay? And what I like to do with these with people is don't play this in the cassette player in the car. It's not a good idea. It's better to do this, any of these techniques, at home when you're less likely to have distractions. I used to tell my kids, if the house is burning and somebody's bleeding to death, knock on the door. Otherwise, somebody will be bleeding to death, and it won't be me. Okay? Just kidding. Lock the door if you have to. Unplug the phone if you have to. For 15 minutes, you deserve to have the peace and quiet that you need. You feel good. Yeah.
Isn't it also true that you should practice that before you eat rather than after you eat, or is that not true?
Yeah, it's best to do it, without feeling hungry and without feeling full, and it's best to do it with clothing that's comfortable and loose on you. And it's not a good idea to do these kinds of things while you're wearing your contacts, because sometimes when you do these things, the contacts get irritated. Take them out. And certainly not be smoking a cigarette and chewing gum. And if you just had 6 cups of coffee, I don't care what you do, you're not going to get the benefit of the technique, because caffeine, as you know, is quite a stimulant, and if you've had a few cups of coffee, you're just trying to swim upstream, It's not going to work. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.